Hey, readers and writers. Today I'm going to share with you a desert scrapbook. This is Virginia Wright Fryerson's book. And a cool fun fact about Virginia Wright Frierson is she lives in Wilmington. She is from Wilmington, North Carolina. She's an artist as well as an author. And the really cool thing is you might have seen some of her art. Have you been to Airlie Gardens? You know the bottle house, the house that's made out of all bottles and they're all cemented together? Yep, that's her art. Pretty cool, huh? Well, this is her book. And as we read the Desert Scrapbook, I want you to look closely at her pictures and listen carefully to her words to understand how she captures the sights, sounds, and feelings of this special place. I'm going to come over here to the dedication. It says, "For my husband, Dargan Frierson, whose work first brought us to the Sonoran Desert, and to our Tucson friends who help us to come back." And so Tucson and the Sonoran Desert, that's in the state of Arizona, so way out west in the western part of our country. Okay. I want you to see, like, there's so much good detail in this, like all of the colors, like she uses in her painting palette. She has her little notebook and she's got her little checklist of things. It says, "The sun is just coming up over the distant mountains. I pack up my painting gear. Watercolors, check. Paper, check. Water bottle, check. Brush and pencil, check. Hat, check. Folding chair, check. Now I must hurry outside to sketch some birds and animals while they are active in the cool early hours. This summer day promises to be another scorcher." I find a beautiful view and sit quietly, listening and waiting for the animals to get used to my presence. Some people think that our Sonoran Desert is just a dry land of mountains, strange plants, and great sweeping skies. But look carefully, and you will also see many interesting creatures. Can you find Virginia in the picture? She kind of blends in. Do you see some little animals already? I definitely see some birds. I love how she writes with so much detail. Once on a spring day, when I was out painting a prickly pear cactus, a desert tortoise crept up to nibble on a ripe fruit. I quickly sketched it until it crawled away with a red stained mouth. Another time I was painting wildflowers. I noticed that a shadow kept passing over my white paper. When I looked up, I was surprised to see a vulture circling right above me. It was so close I could see its wrinkled head and the sunlight through its large wings. It flew off as soon as I waved my arms to show I was not dead and it would not be eating me for lunch. I almost think if I didn't see the pictures, I think I could really visualize what I would draw like in my own sketchbook. Today, as I sketch some doves, I'm startled by a roadrunner bursting from behind a nearby barrel cactus. It catches a zebra-tailed lizard and dashes off, leaving a little cloud of dust. And then right here, it's almost like this part right here is a photograph. Even though it's really just an illustration, I think she drew it kind of like Marissa Moss does in the Amelia book, where she's making it almost look like, oh, here's a photograph, because these little black triangle things, they were like sticky on one side, and so they had a little pocket, and so you could insert the photograph into those little pockets, and it would hold it in there instead of having to use something like tape or glue. Then you could take the photo out and put it back. That was like a little scrapbooking tip. Just scooch myself over here. A cactus wren emerges from its nest of twigs and dry grasses in the jumping cholla. I draw many studies of the nest and the mother wren as she flies back and forth with beetle larvae for her babies. And see, you can see here's her little notebook, and so here's her sketches. So it's almost like this would be the reality, this would be her sketch, and then this would be like her artifact, her little feather that she puts in her scrapbook. The sun is getting higher and the day is getting hotter. Most of the animals are now resting in the cooler, shady places to escape the broiling heat. They will not come out until the cool of evening and the cover of darkness. So then you can read, I like on this part, she puts a little caption for each different animal. So here's the tarantula. He's waiting until nightfall in his cool underground tunnel. So you can see here's the hole, and there's this little room. The desert scorpion hides under a rock, and its babies are clustered safely on its back. If I can zoom in on that a little bit. Oh, maybe not that much. Oh, yeah. So you can kind of see the little babies back there. Let's come over here. A desert pack rat is asleep, curled up inside its messy mound of cactus joints, sticks, leaves, bark, and rocks. A western diamondback rattlesnake stays cool in the abandoned hole of an antelope squirrel. A black-tailed jackrabbit rests in a shallow hole it has dug in the shade of the mesquite tree. An elf owl sleeps in the hole of a squirrel. Can't say that one. Let me get out. Oh, there we go. A kangaroo rat lies asleep, curled up all day in its deep burrow. They never need to drink water. They get all the moisture they need from the seeds and plants they gathered at night. That kind of reminds me of koalas. Koalas in Australia, they don't need to drink water either. They get it all out of the eucalyptus plants. It's interesting. So when I read this part of her book, it really gives me a lot of details about each animal. Her pictures help me understand what they look like and how they adapt to where they live. The creamy white flowers of the saguaros have finished blooming for the year, and now the fruit begins to ripen. It is feasted upon by many desert animals, insects, and birds. The Gila woodpecker has a nest in the hole it has pecked in the giant cactus. I rest in the shade of the Palo Verde tree and look at some seeds and pods I've collected. Above me, a curved-bill thresher cools itself by widely opening its beak. And then I like how this looks like a little piece of note paper torn out of her notebook. This story happened a few years ago. I was sitting on the hot ground painting a mountain view when I noticed a slight movement under a bush. My eyes focused on a huge rattlesnake coiled and perfectly camouflaged next to my foot. I eased back trembling, and as the snake slowly moved away, I saw a large lump in its middle. Luckily for me, it must have just eaten a cottontail. Mm. Thunder grumbles in the distance, and I notice the air is heavier. Maybe today will bring the first rain of the summer monsoons. The dry stalks of the acatillo wave in the hot wind, welcoming the coming storm. I head for my home, looking down as I always do when I walk in the desert, careful not to brush against a spiny cactus or twist an ankle on the loose rock. I drink cool lemonade in my studio, which is in an old water tower at the house. The long awaited rain begins to pour from the clouds, drenching the parched ground. The shallow roots of the saguaro drink up the precious moisture. The cacti will soon swell with the water they must store through the long droughts. With a great crashing of thunder, lightning strikes the tallest saguaro on the mountain. It will collapse, and its skeleton will stand with wooden ribs reaching to the sky like fingers. But the fallen cactus will provide shelter and food for many insects and small animals. I stay inside until the storm passes, carefully sorting some of the cactus spines I have collected. So this part of the scrapbook is all the little things she's collected, like little pieces of skin or feathers, shells, little wings or eggs, droppings even. Before and after. I love to come outside right after a rain has freshened the air and settled the dust. I walk to the dry arroyo near my house and hear a roaring sound. Suddenly, the arroyo is filled with churning water. So much rain falls in such a short time, it cannot all soak into the baked earth. The water collects in many stream beds in the mountains and becomes a muddy, roaring flash flood in the valleys. Don't ever camp in an arroyo. By evening, the spade-foot toads that have been buried deep underground all year have dug up to the surface. They croak and sing and lay eggs in the muddy pools. The eggs must develop into tadpoles and then baby toads before the puddles dry up in a few days. The toads eat many insects in their few days above ground, and then they dig back underground for almost a year to await the next rainy season. Once I saw several garter snakes feasting on spadefoot tadpoles in a puddle. I sit unseen on the rocks and sketch a herd of javelinas as they eat the prickly pear pods and the saguaro fruits. They leave a strong, musky scent in the air and deep prints in the soft mud from their small hooves. There is always a glorious sunset after a rainstorm. The pungent smell of the desert creosote bush perfumes the air. I sit on the rocks with my watercolors, trying to capture the warm, glowing light and the fiery colors. The desert sky grows dark as I return home. A great horned owl sweeps soundlessly over my head. The air fills with the sounds of life after night falls in the desert. Nocturnal creatures creep out of their tunnels and burrows. I hear an elf owl calling from its hole in the saguaro. The toads croak and sing, and coyotes yip and howl. You can see some bats up there. In my studio, I spread out my sketches of the Sonoran Desert, plants and animals, and their feathers, spines, and seeds I have found. I think maybe tomorrow I will collect today's work into a scrapbook that will give a feeling of this desert day from dawn to dusk. And then even her little notes, things that she wanted to remember. And so I think that's what we want to do with our writer's notebooks. We want to make it a place where we collect ideas and sketches. It's okay to like tape things in your writer's notebook that you want to remember, like if it's a movie ticket or a picture of something, maybe you have a photograph of that event, or maybe you print out pictures of something that happened. And so when this is a great way to organize our ideas so that in our writer's notebook we can come back and visit them whenever we want to. I hope you enjoyed that story today. Thank you for listening.